Hello and welcome to the Global Dialogue. I'm Shireen Bhan. Two trends captured public imagination through 2024. Artificial intelligence and the big breakthrough as far as weight management is concerned. Mounjaro, that's the drug from Lilly, has just officially been launched here in India to talk to us about the potential, about the road ahead, and what we could expect in terms of more breakthroughs. Is the global CEO, Dave Bricks. Many thanks for joining us here on CNBC TV18. It's a pleasure having you on the program. Let's start by talking to you about Mounjaro. You've got the first mover advantage. You've launched here in India. What do you believe the headroom for potential growth is?
Yeah, well, such an exciting day for our company in India, for Mounjaro, and especially for patients who are looking for a way to control their diabetes better or their obesity. And India now joining a list of countries launching this product, making an impact in so many ways in society. So, you know, what could be the impact? Obviously, it's a very large opportunity. There are, the prevalence of diabetes is very high in this country, and that's a serious condition where we need good medicine for. Mounjaro is proven to be very effective in controlling diabetes and helping people lose a little weight with diabetes. And then for obesity, which is almost like a precondition to other very serious health problems, we're seeing really strong uptake in many markets where we've launched, and I would expect that here as well. Unfortunately, overweight and obesity is a reality in India.
But it's not seen as a disease.
Yeah, but it actually is, by WHO standards, classified as a disease. And even if you want to argue with that, it's totally clear that being obese leads to more diseases later, over 200 adult conditions. And some studies have shown almost 40% of adult disease is triggered by obesity. So it's important people manage their weight, hopefully with diet and exercise, but if they can't, now there's a medicine, Mounjaro, which can really have a profound effect on their body weight. You
know, before I talk about the future of Mounjaro and what you intend to do with it here in India, I just want to go back to the backstory, because this is not new. We've had GLP-1 and, you know, it's 2006. In fact, you had it on your annual report in 2007 on the cover. Why do you believe we've seen this kind of a breakthrough, and what does it mean now in terms of future adoption?
Yeah, as you mentioned, this class has been out a long time, and there are people with questions about, is it new, is it safe? We actually know a lot about the GLP-1 mechanism and its safety. No drug has no problems, but we know what they are. So I think patients and their doctors can talk about those risks. It's not like there's unknowns there after 20 years of experience. But what we've been doing is improving that original idea. And sometimes in medicine we think of a breakthrough, maybe like the COVID vaccine that came all of a sudden and helped. But most medicines are more of a step-by-step improvement. We launched exenatide in 2006. It was a twice-a-day injection, so that was inconvenient. So we made a weekly injection called Trulicity, which is available in India today. And we noticed that by making it weekly, there were actually fewer side effects at higher doses. Why? Because the drug is sort of tolerizing once it's in your body. Then we added another incretin, so GLP is one, something called GIP, for a dual-acting medicine. That's what tirzepatide is, or the ingredient in Mounjaro. So each step improving to the next, and we're seeing more weight loss, more profound health benefits, better diabetes control with each improvement.
But, you know, and I think this is a number that you gave us in a previous interview that I saw, where you said between Novo and you, it's still about 20 million people globally using some form of weight management drugs at this point in time.
And diabetes.
And diabetes. So what do you believe is going to lead to higher adoption? And do you have the capacity at this point in time to cater to more demand?
Well, capacity is key. Consumer awareness, physician awareness, also important. Payment and support from health systems where that's appropriate. But as you mentioned, we need to make enough. And right now, we've had shortages in the last year in major markets. Lilly's invested very aggressively, though, in our own supply chain. We're in the middle of a $50 billion expansion plan, and those are showing good returns. We're already opening up new factory lines and improving our capacity. This is actually enabling us to launch this week in India, because we're confident we can supply the market over the coming years. We wouldn't introduce it if we weren't confident in that.
Well, you know, let's talk about India and the plans as far as Mounjaro is concerned. Do you believe that we could see Lilly manufacture Mounjaro in India anytime soon?
It's, of course, possible. We're expanding our global footprint. There's a lot of discussion in the air about localizing or regionalizing supply chains. And as India could become an important market for us, it's a smaller market for us now, but Mounjaro may well change that. Open-minded about possibilities here.
What could tip you in favor of actually doing local manufacturing here?
We do have local manufacturing for our insulin line, actually, which is very successful. So we need to talk to those partners. We need to understand what the demand in the market is. And we need to, probably get comfortable with the regulatory environment and some other technical specifics, but certainly not ruling that out and open-minded.
And are you open-minded about partnerships in India as well when it comes to Mounjaro?
We are. I think obesity is an enormous public health crisis, so is diabetes, and no one company can do that alone. So actually part of my visit here is meeting with some of the scaled tech players about consumer communication, physician communication, even pharmacy fulfillment, as well as with some of the bricks and mortar hospital chains. And we want to talk to the government about their public health agenda as well. We noticed even the Prime Minister has been on TV talking about obesity and fitness. That's great. And I think that shows as India is developing and unfortunately getting developed country issues like obesity and chronic disease, the government's engaged in that. So we want to work with them and align our messaging.
But what do you believe is likely to be the inflection point post the drug going off patent, which is 2026, and what will that change in terms of pricing? Because it's still fairly steep. I mean, not comparable to the prices in the US, but in India it works out to what, about between 17,000 and 18,000 rupees a month per person if they choose to go this route.
It is not cheap right now, and that's self-pay today. As more products come into the market, usually competitive forces take hold. Our patent doesn't expire for another decade, but you're mentioning semaglutide, which we're expecting, and we'll adjust our commercial plans to the realities that may present themselves. Our goal is to reach all Indians who need the medication. How to get there with capacity constraint globally and really educating the healthcare workforce on how to use these drugs safely, that will take some time. But we'll start now with the launch we have today at the price points we have. We expect good adoption and good experience, and from there we can build.
You know, it's kind of being held up as this silver bullet, this magic wand that's going to be able to address a whole host of issues outside of just diabetes and weight loss. The impact on alcohol consumption, the impact on smoking. You do have studies that give you some indications that it is working on both those, don't you?
Well, we have developed, last year was an important year because prior to last year, I think the question was, does tirzepatide or Mounjaro not just lower your weight, but affect these conditions triggered by obesity? And we had 4 important data readouts. One in a form of congestive heart failure, sleep apnea, which is the people who wake up and snore aggressively, but it's a serious health condition, diabetes prevention study in that area, and then an earlier study in fatty liver disease. So we're building the clinical evidence. These are not indicated in India. It's important to mention that. But there's scientific studies that have been published and we'll pursue the regulatory pathway for. You're talking about something else, which is what's beyond that. And there are indicators with this class of medications and drugs like it that it's not just affecting appetite, it's affecting other desire centers.
Hedonistic,
exactly. And so the way we know about this is participants in clinical trials from us and our competitors have noted that they have less desire for alcohol, cigarettes, other things. And so certain individual doctors have studied that. It looks promising. Some of those are published. Lilly is undertaking the scaled legitimate studies we need to do as a global pharma player to prove that. And when we prove that, we'll talk about it some more. But it's an interesting effect, and I think draws a lot of interest to this category.
Well, it certainly does. But, you know, speaking of interest, in terms of adoption, there still is a fair degree of stigmatization. I mean, people might be using it, but they don't want to talk about it.
Yes.
And are you seeing that change? I mean, we were talking about how things have changed with Prozac use because depression wasn't seen as a real disease. It wasn't seen as real. Are you seeing that starting to change now with the adoption rates picking up?
And I love that analogy. Lilly invented Prozac many years ago. When we launched it, the standard of care, doctors would say if you were presenting with depressed symptoms was, you seem a little sad, go home and talk to your family. That was what we did for depression. And now we think of that as that would be malpractice, right? So a medicine can sometimes change society's view of a condition and, of course, the healthcare system's view of a condition. I believe that will happen with obesity. Already the WHO classified it as a serious health condition, a disease, but many of us don't think of it that way. We often maybe see someone who has obesity and think there's something wrong with them. It's like their problem. But actually science now shows if people have gained weight but unable to prevent weight gain, it's very difficult for them to lose that weight without medical intervention. We've had surgery, we've had other medical interventions. Here now, Mounjaro is super effective. averaging about 20% weight loss in shorter studies, more than that in longer studies.
Versus people who were put on diet control
only
and
2 or 3%, yeah.
2 or 3%.
So really a big difference. That's the studies we've published in our label here in India.
But going back to the stigmatization issue, are you seeing more people specifically, at least as far as the developed markets are concerned, coming out and saying that, look, we're using it, I mean, celebrities and so on and so forth?
I think probably it's early in India. We're day one here.
Exactly.
But in other markets where there's been more use of whether it be semaglutide or our drug Mounjaro or Zepbound, we are now starting to see people talk about it more openly. I noticed that in social circles, actually. People say, oh, I've used your product to change my life. I get letters from patients, by the way, every day with those stories. But even on TV and in radio shows and more famous sports stars or Hollywood actors, this kind of thing. Elon Musk has tweeted about using Mounjaro. So these aren't endorsements they're making, but they're just saying this helped me. And I think that does help society in a way, normalize something that should be normal. Why should we be unhealthy when we have a choice? We can use a product like ours to treat obesity and change people's long-term health outcomes. That's a good thing. Now, if they can do it with daily discipline and diet, exercise, great. That's the foundation of common health. But when people have gained a lot of weight, that's too difficult. And science shows that for most people, not successful. So here's another way to really restore long-term health, to affect conditions like diabetes that already manifest from obesity. And there'll be more medicines coming, too. So I think we'll look back and say this was a moment of change in terms of the stigma of obesity.
We are going to take a break here on the Global Dialogue and return with our conversation with Dave Ricks of Lilly right after this.